Just last week, Namibia backed former U.S. President Joe Biden's decision to remove Cuba from the U.S. list of state sponsors of terrorism. However, in a recent turn of events, President Donald Trump, upon taking office, has reinstated Cuba on the list. In response, Namibia has strongly condemned this decision, calling it unfortunate and unjustified. To help us unpack what it means for international relations, I'm joined by Ambassador Jerobeam Shaanika, Deputy Executive Director and Head of the Department of Multilateral Relations and Cooperation at the Ministry of International Relations and Cooperation. Ambassador, good evening and welcome to Daily Roundup.
Good evening, Selma.
Yes, Ambassador, it was just last week that a statement was sent out on Namibia, supporting this decision. And how does Namibia's government view President Trump's decision to put Cuba back on the U.S. list of state sponsors of terrorism? And what are the key reasons behind Namibia's condemnation?
Thank you very much, Selima. I think I have to maybe perhaps start that last week there was a decision made by President Biden to remove Cuba from the list of state sponsors of terrorism. I came here and I was speaking to John, and I remember, as I said, mindful of the fact that next week, Monday, there will be a change in administration. And I will not be surprised if this decision is revised. And it's exactly what happened. I think international relations, or when the country is setting a policy, it should not be seen as a bipartisan, because it will set a very dangerous precedence. If one president comes, do something, and the other one comes and change.
Of course.
I'm not saying
weeks
that.
Apart even.
I'm not saying that country cannot change policies, because sometimes circumstances demand that due to complexity of geopolitics, we have to change, and then you explain as to why that change is warranted. But when you do it on reasons that are not fully explained, it gives an uncertainty, because everybody will say, if this can happen, it can also happen to another country.
Of course.
I was just listening as I was coming in, that he is also going to declare the cartel as terrorism, the Mexican, which the president of Mexico did not agree, although she says what. I think these are type of things that will give a different reading from other member states. I think when there is that consistency, I think it gives assurance that how to deal with a certain member state. I think it really gives worries to others. And more so, if it is indeed that Cuba is sponsoring terrorism, then let that be pointed out. And who are those terrorists? And what act of terrorism are they committing? And against who? It is a burden of proof that need to be demonstrated.
Yeah, Ambassador Shaanika, looking at it, I think it's not the first time. This is the second time. It was also done during the administration of the former President Barack Obama. So looking at that, Democratic President first, Barack Obama, and Joe Biden now again, that was done now this week. And what does this say about U.S. foreign policy and its consistency, also given how it seems to shift depending on which party is in power, which we mentioned earlier?
I think, as I was just saying, I really don't like to question how countries are pursuing their foreign policy. But I think when you are doing it in this kind of a gladiator kind of pursuit, I think it make other people worried because one comes in and enact a policy, and everybody will say, okay, I think this is what, I mean, they will start adjusting themselves, then suddenly it comes and flip. Now the question is, why was it done in the first place? Why was it done now? What are the reasons behind it? And then everybody will be worried and really question that, is it personal, personality clash? Because you see, you don't approach foreign policy based on personal emotion.
Of course.
I think that one is something that, or you cannot approach foreign policy to like a movie where you want to appease a certain section of the populations, either your supporter or so. Foreign policy is a matter of state and is conducted based on the national interests and national security. And it has to, everybody must understand why certain actions are taken. And if you take them without or in a confusing way, then it will also give even the credibility will be, there will be a question of credibility.
And what was the significance of former President Biden's decision, that was now on the 14th of January, and to remove Cuba from the list, and why has President Trump again decided to reverse it?
Last week I was asked that question, and I was saying, I cannot really answer a question without knowing what was in the mind of the President Biden. He took a decision at the dying minute of his presidency. And even though it was at the last minute, I think one hope that because I again repeat, when you are making an allegation, you need to back it up with evidence so that everybody knows, so that even those of us who are questioning it can see that, yes,
indeed, yeah,
this is done because of there are terrorists that are being sponsored by Cuba, and they are causing this harm to international peace and stability, because as member state, we have committed ourselves to promote international cooperation, peace and security. As, for example, Namibia, Article 96 of the Namibian Constitution, subsection C, commit that for the state to promote international cooperation, peace and security. Because once there is cooperation internationally, it creates an enabling environment for peace and security. And all what every state aspired for is peace and security, because those are enabling environment. And sometimes those actions that are taken, they contradict that pursuit for peace and security.
Your emphasis here is to say that there must be a backup as reasons as to why the, Cuba is listed on that list as a
exactly.
terrorist.
They must be, and let us see, because I'm saying, if a country is doing action that are contrary to the United Nations Charter, so it must come out. And you see the problem, I know sometimes when I read comment on social media, some people call the Namibian government is naive, putting the foreign policy in danger because you are involving yourself in a matter that has nothing to do with you. But you see, the international community is one, and Cuba, of course, is an important ally of Namibia. There's no doubt about it. From the historical perspective, they stood by our side during the dark days of apartheid, and some of their sons and daughters have died to ensure that there was a change in Southern Africa, which brought up the current dispensation that we are enjoying.
Of course.
And we cannot turn our back on them. But at the same time, we are saying, if there is an irrefutable proof, let it come out and be displayed for all to see.
Indeed. Ambassador, why does Namibia see the normalization of diplomatic ties between U.S. and Cuba as an important step forward?
Well, again, I repeat, our Constitution, through Article 96, have really mandated that the states must ensure to create mutual, just and mutual beneficial relation among all nations. So it is something that we are doing as mandated by our Constitution, or the provision of the Constitution of Namibia. I don't think when we call for peaceful coexistence, it is an offensive to any member state. I think that is what every member state is aspired to do, even those who have signed up to become members of the United Nations. One of the conditions for you to be admitted as a member of the United Nations is to be a peace-loving member of international community. And what we are doing is not something that we are inciting conflict. We want to ensure that country lives as neighbor in peace and harmony.
Of course.
And of course, again, our Constitution, through Article 96E, compel us to encourage settlement of international dispute by peaceful means. And this action that we are taking, they are not contradictory to that constitutional provisions. And I really sometimes feel that when we do certain things, people start questioning. I don't think that there is any contradictory there. And it is something that is supplementary to those efforts.
And in your view, Ambassador, how crucial is dialogue in resolving the long-standing political difference between the U.S. and Cuba?
You see, when you are talking of dialogue, you are meaning that people engage
of course
in a conversation. And I can tell you, I think there were two presidents of the United States who have spoken something about fear. One was Franklin Delano Roosevelt, who said the only thing we have to fear is fear itself. And John F. Kennedy, in his inaugural speech, when he said, let us not fear to negotiate, and let us not negotiate out of fear. So dialogue, when you enter without any fear of contradiction, it can lead to, or it can be enabler for peace and stability, because you are sitting down and you are pointing out a certain point that needs to be resolved, to say, okay, for us, we feel that this thing should be done this way. And of course, in doing so, you will be guided by international law.
Of course. And Ambassador, briefly, as we close, of course, we're running out of time. Just more broadly, what key principles does Namibia believe should guide international relations based on its stance on U.S.-Cuba relations?
Well, the principle was sovereign equality, because all states are sovereign, and they are sovereign. And international cooperation, that we must cooperate. And of course, we must also be guided by principles of diplomatic engagement to solve whatever differences that is there. And of course, there also must be kind of multilateralism where we all commit ourselves to all those principles. And any other principle that embedded within international law. Because when a state starts demanding others to do certain things, and only when you do so because of the opposition being a powerful state, others will follow, but they are not following with their heart. They do so because they know the consequences of doing otherwise. But it doesn't foster cooperation. I mean, when the United States, just a few weeks ago, there was a fire in California. Who came to the United States aid? It was Canada, and it was Mexico. Because they believe in international cooperation, in helping to solve problems. So you might have or be armed with nuclear weapons, but you can have problems that you cannot solve with nuclear weapons.
Thank you so much, Ambassador, for being on Daily Roundup.
Thank you very much. I was here last week, and I was telling John that if there's any need for me to come back,
of course,
I will answer the call.
And here you are today again.
Yeah, and I've said two things. One is that I was afraid that the reversal is going to come, and I was also talking about rain. And of course, last night we have good rain. So let it continue.
Indeed. All right, we'll be back after the short break.